The United States is once again putting its sanctions machinery to work against Iran, but sanctions are not new. America has used economic restrictions for more than a century, from trade embargoes to countrywide restrictions during the Cold War. The modern system expanded significantly after the Second World War, and particularly after the Cold War, when Washington increasingly moved from broad embargoes to targeted financial sanctions against banks, companies, individuals, and specific sectors. Today, sanctions can mean restricting trade, blocking access to U.S. financial institutions or systems, freezing assets, and threatening third-country companies with penalties if they continue doing business with a sanctioned country. That last part, secondary sanctions, is what gives the United system its global reach. Iran is one of the clearest examples of how this weapon has evolved. After the 1979 hostage crisis, President Jimmy Carter froze Iranian assets under U.S. jurisdiction and imposed sweeping economic restrictions. Since then, sanctions have expanded repeatedly, targeting Iran's oily revenues, banks, shipping networks, and nuclear programs. But Iran is not alone. Cuba has faced a broad U.S. embargo since the early 1960s. North Korea has faced extensive U.S. restrictions for decades, later expanded over its nuclear and missile programs. And Venezuela has faced increasingly severe U.S. financial and oil sanctions, particularly since 2017. Russia represents the most dramatic example of that shift. After the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, the U.S. and its allies immobilized roughly $300 billion of Russian central bank reserves. This changed the scale of the sanctions weapon. The objective was no longer simply stop them from trading, it became prevent them from accessing or using their own financial reserves. And this brings us to one of the most powerful and controversial parts of the sanctions system: frozen assets. A frozen asset is not necessarily confiscated. It generally means the owner cannot transfer, sell, or otherwise use the asset without regulatory authorization. Russia is currently the biggest example. Iran has also had assets frozen under U.S. sanctions since 1979, although estimates of the total Iranian assets currently frozen around the world vary considerably. So the sanctions story has evolved from trade restrictions to financial restrictions, to the ability to immobilize sovereign wealth and pressure banks far beyond the U.S. borders. And now Washington is taking that weapon back to Iran, targeting not only Tehran, but potentially the companies and countries that keep Iran connected to the global economy.